Welcome to your American Thanksgiving podcast episode of Mio on MMA. Happy Thanksgiving to the American contingent, and I don't really know what to say about this week. We had no UFC card. We've got a lot of UFC. We have two major UFC news stories, and we have a PFL Championship card. No Bellator. No one. Neither trying to occupy this spot, a chance to capture the MMA audience. My lord, I am just now looking at what UFC 282 looks like right now. This card sucks for a pay-per-view. Obviously, I'm looking at it because of the news that Yuri Prohaska has injured his shoulder and has vacated the UFC light heavyweight title. And now you have a light heavyweight title fight between Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev. Not an interim title, but the actual title, because he's just vacated it. You've got that headlining the card. So you've got kind of a faux heavyweight or a faux championship fight at the top. You've got Paddy Pimblett and Jared Gordon listed right now as a co-main event. Wow, that is bad. Then you got Santiago Ponzinibbio and Robbie Lawler, which has all kinds of like sadness hedging. Bryce Mitchell, Ilia Topuria. Looking forward to that fight. That's a good fight. Shabazian versus Lungiambula. Billy Quarantillo versus Alexander Hernandez. That's fine. Darren Till versus Dricus Duplessis. That's fine. Eric Silva, TJ Brown, Jairzinho Rosenstruck, Chris Daukaus, Chris Curtis versus Joaquin Buckley, which that I'm excited for. But the prior two fights, I'm not. Daniel Da Silva versus Vinicius Salvador. Fine. Again, fine. Jay Perrin, Paul Rosa Jr. Not really looking forward to that. Like, you have the whole thing, like, Perrin, I just don't think really is a UFC caliber fighter. And then, like, Rosas Jr. is that 18-year-old kid they signed off the Contender Series, which feels all kinds of wrong. And then OSP versus Antonio Tricoli. I'm not gonna say this fight card, this pay-per-view was ever like super good to begin with, but like Yuri Prohaska versus Glover Teixeira being lost off of it, and Jamie Pickett versus Bo Nickel, because people have tons of hype around Bo Nickel, are big blows. But even beforehand, I don't think this was a great card, and it's just becoming worse. The other piece of news, Conor McGregor has announced that he is looking for a comeback. I think it was February, he said. Am I wrong on that? Am I wrong that it was February? But that he is re-entering the testing pool for February. It's interesting. He says clear to enter the testing pool. Why would you be clear to entering a testing pool? Like, what? I assume it's just like a misstep of like combination of words, but it's like weird. Like, there's no clearance to be back in the testing pool unless he was on PEDs to help build muscle for his TV role, to help recover from the injury. Just saying. The whole thing around Conor is messed up. And that's about all there is in terms of like official news from the UFC. I will look at two talking points though going on right now. Number one is like people seem legitimately angry that Dustin Poirier didn't hug Michael Chandler after their fight. Didn't like take the I'm putting air quotes around this classy way in victory. Kind of suggesting Poirier is a fake nice guy. And I'll say this: I don't know Dustin Poirier. I'm not gonna vouch here for Dustin Poirier being a super classy, nice dude at any other time, because like my fandom of him is his fights are amazing. Like that's my fandom. But I am going to say this: is that the idea that you want to hold someone to a high standard after the fight is a bit silly, because almost every fighter has some kind of bad look moment. They said something. They did something. They were involved in a brawl, post-fight, whatever it may be, that I don't like if that is your evidence that Poirier is not a super awesome person, then no fighter ends up being super awesome. And like the weird thing here is like these are people who still like believe like Michael Chandler is a good dude. It's like, so the guy who fish hooked the other guy and fouled him 8 times and has fouled almost every UFC opponent he's had and almost every Bellator opponent he's had is the super nice dude. But the dude who wouldn't hug him post-fight and, you know, said some dumb things about this is my house and whatever. Like, I'm not here saying it was a good look. The extended, like, interaction between the two. Because it wasn't. But no. Chandler's the victim in this. No. Like, Chandler is like the dedicated fake nice guy. So I mean, if you know, he fouls, he says all kinds of stupid stuff after fights. So like, I don't know. It's weird that this is even like a conversation in any way, shape, or form about it. Like, you know, what Chandler did in that fight, you know, shouldn't be hugged, shouldn't be handled with class and gentlemanliness. Dude freaking fish hooked. And still has the good Christian American boy act going on because apparently like, no, guys, I'm really a clean fighter. It's the referees are there. Anything to not apologize or own the fact that you fouled the living crap out of Dustin Poirier. Like, I don't understand how there are sides in this fight. I don't get it. I don't understand. I could have sworn I had something else. I don't now. Maybe it was the Kayla Harrison thing, which I'll talk about after the fight. Anyways, PFL 2022 championships. We'll start off with Kayla Harrison versus Larissa Pachenko, final of the 155 women's tournament. You can find Harrison is as much of a favorite as minus 715, and Pachenko is as big of an underdog as plus 490. I don't have much to say about this. Like, this is a fight that has happened twice before. The result was the same both times. And I have no doubt that Pachenko has been working on things to deal with Kayla. That this is her entire goal when it comes to... I just thought about what I was thinking about. I'll talk about it after this fight. But I have no doubt that like her training camp throughout this whole season has been about beating Kayla. I have no doubt that she has ideas of things that might slow down Kayla, that might handle Kayla, that might make Kayla go deeper into the well of grappling and everything. But there is no reason to pick her to win. They're honestly they're very, very, very seldom. No, well, to be clear, very seldom will you get 3 fights between 2 fighters where the one has won the first 2 fights. And the only time that I think you ever really have an interest in saying that the person who's 0-2 won, Rampage and Vanderlei comes to mind, is essentially if you have like someone who's just washed physically. They've gotten old, they've faded, and Harrison hasn't done that. She's still a way more physical person. Pachenko is a blown-up bantamweight. Kayla is at least an actual featherweight, because there's been some debate about could she make 145? Like, does there have to be a 155 division for her? Or is this just like coddling her to a certain degree? But like the things that worked in fight 1 and fight 2 should still be there. She still should be able to take the fight down, should be able to control it, should be able to survive on the feet, if not actually land some pretty good offense on the feet, because Kayla has been getting better as a striker. There's not really much here. The betting line is super wide for a reason. Kayla by decision, I guess, because they went the distance both other times. It's hard to really see like 5 rounds of this, but I don't know. We'll see. Kayla by decision. I would like an upset. Not because I have any real problem with Kayla, but just because that would be far more interesting. there's nothing for Kayla to do in PFL that's remotely interesting. Like, let's be clear about that. And this kind of brings up this whole topic that always comes up with Kayla Harrison. And rightfully so. I get it. Is people have the notion that she took money over legacy. That she stayed in PFL to pick up the easy tournament wins and so on. And to those people, I kind of have this weird question of, I don't know what she's supposed to do. And I get it. The problem is she talks about legacy. Like she did a Ariel Helwani interview where she talked about she kind of shat on the legacy, the resume of Chris Cyborg. Who has she really beaten? Which is something that could be very much turned back on Kayla. And people have brought this up. She talks about legacy, so she should be concerned about legacy. How does she get a legacy, though? Like, there's a real serious point here that Kayla Harrison has 2 fights of any interest in the world of MMA. Cyborg, who people will claim is smaller than her and on steroids. And Nunes, who people will claim is way smaller than her. Like, the problem for Kayla here is that she's in the Gabby Garcia position, essentially, in that I don't think that there is a right answer for her legacy path. Like, that there just isn't enough. There's not enough opponents. There's not enough interesting matchups. There's not enough to build a legacy there. Straight up. And of course, Garcia is further complicated by, like, you know, obvious PED use and fighting grandmas. So she's not Garcia in that regard. But, like, honestly, if you think that Kayla Harrison should go to the UFC or Bellator or whatever, I ask you seriously, hit me on Twitter, hit me in a comment on YouTube, hit me in the Discord. What are the interesting fights? And, like, particularly in the UFC, you've got the women's featherweight division probably getting closed off here and having never exceeded, like, 6 warm bodies. Like what is she supposed to do? Like, I hate to come off as a Kayla defender here because I think she does herself no favors with how she talks about things. But I don't know what she's supposed to do to gain this legacy. Honestly, I don't know what it's supposed to do. I don't know what she's supposed to. Anyways. The thing I thought about is that somebody put out there, and it was a relatively well followed Twitter user who talks about MMA. The idea that, like, the Paul brothers have created the this sense of hype in MMA, where, like, Bo Nickel comes in, talks a bunch of stuff, and we buy it. Here's the thing. I think the Paul brothers are created by the same thing that created Conor McGregor to a certain degree. We have gotten into a society where it is no longer considered really a bad thing to be wrong. Honestly. Where, like, we live in a journalistic sports society where Stephen A. Smith is one of the biggest names in sports journalism. Air quotes again. And Stephen A. Smith's entire gimmick is, I am going to say ludicrous things, and when I'm right, I'm a genius. And when I'm wrong, people won't care. I think that's what it comes down to. Is I think deep down inside, MMA fans bought into hype trains for a long time, and Conor McGregor and the general discourse made it kind of cool to say, like, hey, Bo Nickel's going to win 2 titles in the UFC. Jake Paul can actually be a good boxer. And, like, objectively, neither of those statements are going to be true. Jake Paul is a better boxer and has the physical capability to be a better boxer than anyone really probably wants to admit. But he's not going to win world titles. And Bo Nickel has immense physical potential, immense technical potential, and may very well win the middleweight title to a similar fashion to Chris Weidman, for example. It's a division distinctly lacking wrestling, is dominated by two kickboxers, in Izzy Adesanya and Alex Bahia, who probably can be defeated by like a dedicated wrestling game with the technique and the physicality to back it up. But at the same time, there were people talking about that for a long time. They just weren't as loud about it. We have social media now, and we have like this encouragement of the hot take. Like, that's all I said. Like, the Pauls deserve zero credit for creating this environment. They themselves are a product of it. All right, let's move on to more fights. Brendan Loughnane versus Bubba Jenkins. Featherweight championship bout. They're about even on the measurables, and I want to talk about Bubba because I'm picking against Bubba Jenkins, but I want to say a lot of nice things about him. Bubba Jenkins is a stud wrestler, a lot of athletic ability. We just talked about Bo Nickel. This guy's not on that level, but like is a similar archetype. But the problem with Bubba, I think, is that number one, at featherweight, wrestling has never been enough to get by. Two, he is honestly like refused to develop a structured, defensively sound, nuanced striking game. Like, his striking game is effective because he is explosive, he's fast, he's powerful, he's coordinated, he can throw. The man literally jumped over Chris Wade with a flying knee. And, you know, it does have comfort striking. Like, he doesn't seem like a Hodger Gracie or like various other grapplers who've come into MMA and been distinctly uncomfortable strikers. Bubba is comfortable as a striker, but he's built this all flash. There's no setting things up. Like the Chris Wade flying knee, for example, zero setup, doesn't even land, goes right over Chris Wade because there's no nuance to his striking game. And as a wrestler, I think he's remarkably overconfident. And he should be, with his accolades and his physicality, should be confident. But you watch a lot of, like, the Chris Wade fight in particular, but other fights as well, where, like, dude will just be like, so, what you're going to do is I'm going to let you get a good position. And then I'm just going to shut it down because I'm that good. And when he's not that good, when he's a better wrestler and a better athlete, but not necessarily that much better, he gets taken down, he gets not controlled because it's hard to control him, but he ends up being put into worse positions. Like, he kind of baits it and it backfires horrendously. And Brendan Loughnane, I'm bringing up Chris Wade a lot because, of course, these two both fought Chris Wade. Loughnane beat him. Jenkins did not. And there's a very similar stylistic aptitude there in the fact that Loughnane, I don't know what his background is, actually, to be honest. I'm kind of interested in this. Let's have a look up. Let's have a quick look up here. What is it? Because I suspect it's not wrestling. That is Loughane's background. I suspect it's not. Don't think we'll find an answer here. See if Tapology has an answer. No fundamental style. But he's a competent wrestler. He's a good scrambler. He's a good chain wrestler. He's the kind of guy that you don't want to give advantageous positions to. And like I said, Jenkins will. And he's actually a pretty good wrestler, striker. He's a pretty nuanced striker. Good jab, good builds combinations, throws diversity. There's not a lot of power to him. Like, he doesn't finish people. He hasn't finished anyone since 2008, I think I have here in my 2018 here in my, yeah, there it is. No finishes since 2018, which is a concern because Jenkins admittedly has only lost one decision. But he can really use the Chris Wade game plan with more of a striking bias to probably pick up the win here. Like, I understand it's a 5-round fight. It's hard to win 5 rounds against Bubba Jenkins without finishing him, without hurting him, without having those dynamic moments that he tends to give up that has led to most of his losses. But the volume striking, the combinations, the diversity, the ability to catch, the ability to counter wrestle, the ability to chain wrestle, the ability to scramble, it's all there. All the building blocks to replicate Bubba Jenkins' loss to Chris Wade is there. And I'm not taking a hot take here because Logain is the favorite, minus 160 to minus 190 with a plus 138 to plus 155 underdog on Bubba Jenkins. So it looks like I'm definitely not in the minority here. But yeah, Logain by decision. Talking about rematches, Anton Delia versus Matthias Scheffel. This fight happened 6 months ago. They're rematching now. They've had to prepare for 2 other fights in the meantime. What do we really expect to have changed? Delia's still bigger, stronger, longer. Honestly, feels kind of faster. Scheffel is Scheffel really gave him the front foot last fight, and I am hoping that he doesn't do that this fight. I am hoping Scheffel does better. But like the level of better that Scheffel would have to do to get a win here, without having a lot of time to decompress the fight, without having a lot of time to prepare specifically, suggests you really have to go with Delia. And I'm picking him by TKO again. And the betting odds are fairly wide for a heavyweight fight because you got minus 250 to minus 320 on Delia, plus 200 to plus 275 on Scheffel. You could consider a bet on Scheffel at plus 275. Not gonna lie. I don't know what his win here looks like. But, he's also pulled out some upsets in the past. Julia Budd, Aspen Ladd. This is a sad fight. Okay, so here's the deal. Julia Budd is 39 years old. She's a legitimate featherweight. 2 inches taller. 4 inches in reach. Good kickboxer. I'm going to take a beverage here real quick. Good kickboxer. Physical presence. Monster-looking woman. But 39 years old, she's definitely on her way out the door. Her last couple of fights have shown her fighting people that in her prime, she would have probably dominated, probably would have gotten out of there, and she's not doing that anymore. Aspen Ladd's a really good fighter. Potentially. She has the physical ability. She has some, and she'll show moments, both as a grappler and as a striker, of actually really being very good. The problem is she just got cut by the UFC. And I know technically it's a let go because, according to her anyways, and the UFC hasn't countered this, she was offered a contract, but they said that they would only book her at 135, and she took the option to go out the door because she probably can't make 135. But her entire career is this whole block of cannot trust. This whole thing of like struggling with the weight cut, which shouldn't be an issue here, but struggling with technique, struggling with confidence, struggling with everything. Every fundamental thing that is very, very hard to fix is wrong with Aspen Ladd's game. And she's still at a camp with her, I don't remember if they're married. I think it's just boyfriend, coach, Jim West, that suggests that nothing will really get done. And obviously, like the other real concern with this is that you'll remember West was really hard on her in the corner during one of her UFC fights and got heat for it. And then became super supportive, non-constructive corner after that. I've said it before. I like nothing about this situation that Ladd is in. it feels like she's got to go somewhere else. It feels and find herself and find some source of confidence and energy because she can. Like that's the thing is that like what's wrong with Lad is hard to fix, but is fixable. What's wrong with Bud right now is not fixable. Father Time is undefeated. I'm still picking Bud to win a decision. I'm still picking Lad to come out there to have very obvious pathways to victory and not be able to implement them. And Bud to still be a good enough kickboxer, essentially. Because Lad's striking is really, really fundamental to basically beat her up on the feet. And I'm honestly surprised that Lad is like a minus 220 to minus 235 favorite. Like, I expected her to be a favorite. She's the bigger name. She's the ex-UFC fighter. But oh well, my lord, I can't watch her last couple of UFC fights and think that this is a woman that has anything put together that I would put money on at minus 200 plus. Oh my lord. And this is kind of the hopeful, like, this is PFL's, like, hopeful challenger to Kayla Harrison. Oh, boy. Bud is a plus 165 to plus 190 underdog. I would be riding that underdog pretty substantially if I was betting right now. Stevie Ray versus Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Again, two guys that kind of like were in the UFC and gave me no real faith in them. Stevie Ray just feels like kind of too much of a blank canvas. Like he's good defensively. He's good at neutralizing a fight. He's not a blank canvas in the way that a David Rickles, for example, is. But he really doesn't impose on a fight like ever. And as much as I've never gotten a good feeling about Aubin-Mercier. Good grappler, don't get me wrong. Like good judo player, has put some fundamental striking to accompany it, to complement it. But he just never has seemed physical enough to me. I guess I'm going with Aubin-Mercier. He will impose on the fight. He knows what he is. He will pressure. He will use his striking to set up his grappling. And I just, as much as I trust Stevie Ray to make it like a really close and kind of boring fight, I don't trust him to actually win it. I don't trust him to put any kind of authority and stank on any combinations or to take over the grappling aspects or to really just get it done. Aubin-Mercier is a really wide favorite in this for some reason. Minus 350 to minus 410. And Stevie Ray plus 260 to plus 300. Like, obviously, I agree that Aubin-Mercier should be the favorite. Obviously, I'm picking him. But he is one of the big favorites on the card. Not the biggest, obviously. That still is, that's Kayla Harrison. But one of the bigger favorites on the card. The only bigger favorite, I think, is Kayla Harrison. No. Magomed Kirimanov is a bigger favorite. But like third biggest favorite on the card. That's a bit weird. You guys are seeing something I'm not in Aubin-Mercier, I guess, is what it comes down to. Or maybe the general betting public is just that anti-Stevie Ray. 170 finals, Delano Taylor versus Sadibou C. I kept saying for the longest time Sadibou Sai, and I still really like that name, but like Sadibou C is fine. C's got 3 inches of reach, and that is the real question for me because I really like Delano Taylor's game way more than C's game. Like there's a punishing nature to Delano Taylor's game. There's an aggression. There's an imposition of fight in his game that is completely absent from Sadabusi's game. Sadabusi is like, he's a range striker, and that honestly just kind of feels like it. He'll let you pressure while being pretty good on the counter and establish his jab and try to keep you at range with really no urgency to turn the fight to his favor. No real urgency to hurt you. Went to decision with Rory McDonald, whereas Taylor finished Rory McDonald. And don't get me wrong, a win over Rory McDonald in 2022, or to be honest, probably for the last 5 years, hasn't really meant much. But like, Taylor saw a guy that like, I can just beat the brakes off of, whereas C saw a guy that like still had to be like intimidating a little bit. Taylor's the better grappler. He's younger. He's got more athletic upside, I think, at this point. Maybe like prime to prime. That's not the case. But C's not really in his prime. He's not washed by any means, but he's not in his prime. And Taylor is. Taylor's a young, up-and-coming bull. And the only real question I have is that like, Taylor is used to having reach. Dude is 6'3", if I recall correctly. Am I right on that? Am I right on the heights? I think it's 6'3". They're both 6'3". Has a 77-inch reach. And has historically been used to the idea that he is going to be the taller, longer, lankier man. And that's not the case here. This is the first time, other than Rory McDonald, where like there is some level of parity. And in fact, a reach disadvantage. So does he deal with that well? But I think C's tendency to allow you to pressure him just opens up a lot of avenues for Taylor. He's an explosive finisher. Potentially, I have him by TKO. He's my underdog pick here because he's plus 132 to plus 155, and C is minus 168 to minus 188. So, like, that's a good one. He's not my first underdog pick. Obviously, I picked Julia Budd, who is an underdog on the card. I'm also picking... Am I picking any other? I guess... You can find Shaman Marias as the quote underdog, but it's still at minus odds, and I'm taking him. But yeah, this is my underdog that I'm taking because of feel good reasons. Like I really think that there's a good game there. Now both of them, of course, lost to Magomed Kiramov. So, that's a weird feeling for a season finale. But hey. Omar Akhmedov versus Rob Wilkinson. Two guys who fought in the UFC. Two guys who didn't do very well. Two guys that have all kinds of flaws in their game. Wilkinson, it's so many defensive liabilities that really should burn him. And Akhmedov, it's a gassing issue, sort of low output issue when he doesn't gas. Sort of low-paced power kickboxing game. I'm going with Wilkinson. Wilkinson's got that like exciting finishing ability. He's finished a lot of guys. Akhmedov, probably is a better defensive fighter and probably even a better striker than anyone that he's finished before. But I don't know. I just have no real faith in Akhmedov that like, honestly, him getting his weight cut under control and like getting to 185 probably is really where he would do a lot of damage. But hey, Antonio Carlos did really well at 205 in PFL. So there you go. And Wilkinson's the favorite, minus 188 to minus 227, plus 150 to plus 180 for Akhmedov. Feels a little bit wide, maybe, but I don't know. I got Wilkinson by TKO. Shaman Rice versus Marlon Moraes. This is the first of 3 fights where honestly, like, it's just kind of exclusion picking, where like I'm not picking the guy that I'm picking to lose in really any fight, and that's Marlon Moraes has got no chin anymore. Like, he beat Shaman Moraes, and to be honest, probably all the technical factors that went into that, being the better grappler, being the better striker, they're probably all still there. But Moraes is big and powerful and still 32 years old, still in his prime. Marlon's chin is done. Shaman Moraes by TKO. It's still close on the betting lines. I get it. It's a rematch of a fight that Marlon won. Marlon had a way more successful run in the UFC than Shaman Moraes did. Shaman Moraes is not really a great fighter by any means. He's a favorite at minus 108 to minus 125. You can get Marlon at plus 100 to minus 120. But it just comes down to, I don't trust Marlon Moraes not to get his arse knocked out. Natan Schulte versus Jeremy Stephens. Again, an elimination by just not really having any faith in Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens' game was always based on a tremendous amount of physicality. It was never based on like a really marvelous grappling game or a nuanced striking game or a well technically put together game. It was based on toughness, otherworldly power at one point, and speed and explosiveness. He doesn't have that anymore. Still reasonably tough. Like he's not like Marlon Moraes, who I think a stiff breeze would get knocked out, which is why I'm picking Schulte by decision. But he's just not those things anymore. He's not super powerful anymore. He's not super explosive anymore. He's not super fast anymore. He's back up at 155, where he's not even particularly big. He's a plus 295 to plus 330 favorite or underdog. Schulte's minus 400 to minus 455. Bit wide, given that Schulte doesn't really finish people, and Stephens does have still momentarily dangerous abilities, but Schulte by decision. Magomed Kiramov. Probably a win a decision against Gleason Tebow as well. He's a minus 450 to minus 556 favorite to Tebow's plus 320, plus 340 range, plus 390, range. 5 inches in reach, 5 inches in height. Magomed Kirov is a giant compared to Tebow. Tebow's still strong, still has actually underrated defensive striking, is still hard to bully in clinch or in wrestling exchanges, but is like increasingly running out of like offensive ability. And Magomed Kiramov, I have such a hard time with that name. Still in his prime, 32 years old, still probably actually getting better. Good striker, sneaky striker, typical Dagestani fighter, good wrestling, good grappler. It's not a fight that Tebow won in his prime. And it's not a fight I'm picking Tebow to win out of his prime. Dakota Ditcheva is a minus 350 to 400 favorite against Catherine Koromgenis. Not sure how to say her name. Plus 240 to plus 312 underdog. She looks like Catherine actually does look like a decent prospect, but like 33 years old, 2-0, coming to combat sports a little bit late. Ditcheva should beat her up. She's younger. She's in her prime. She's getting better. She looks actually pretty scary as a striker. Has a pretty reasonable grappling game as well. I have her by TKO. And then the fight to open the night is like a 1-1 fighter against an 0-0 fighter. Like, are we really getting into that? Like, I'm a little disappointed by PFL putting that fight on the card because like Bellator gets away with it by like making no bones about their undercard being complete filler, but PFL's trying to like be more UFC with the undercard, and I don't know. It just feels like there should be better fighters than that. Then again, they just had Miles Price in a flyweight or in a lightweight tournament. Anyways, that is the card breakdown. That is the episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed what was probably more rant heavy than usual. Below, to the left, to the right, above, you will find a link tree and a Discord link, a bunch of other links as well, to to where you can consume this podcast on YouTube, Acast, Anchor, and Spotify. And also join the Discord for simulated sports action. We got MMA, we got pro wrestling, we got slam ball. Also a lot of talk about MMA and the Valkyrie Prediction League. So hey, check it out. You can also find my Twitch channel there. If you're into gaming and you would like to see what games I enjoy and what I do when I game. So happy Thanksgiving again if you're celebrating. And please join me next time. It'll be next Thursday. There you go.